good and the damage they can do with the spillovers from what they can do. So I'm thinking of the UK and Iceland, right? I mean, the UK, Iceland was small, but its banking system was 10 times the size of Iceland. You know, Luxembourg, it's 20 times the size of the economy. How do you even think about that? Who's in charge of this animal? Ex post, the UK uses anti-terrorism legislation in order to ring fence, in effect, whatever assets they could find there. I think the task should be to prevent these kinds of extreme cliff events from happening. If it takes requiring some capital and some liquidity at the host level in order to make everybody sleep at night a little more soundly, fine. Confronting the interaction between that and FDIC's single point of entry, all the capital, all the the main bailable capital is at the holding company level, is something that again should be done up front. Will it eliminate ring fencing altogether? Will it automatically build trust? No. I think that's why you need these constant small bore institutional contexts. So I'm afraid I don't have a very flashy answer to it. But I think the choice between home and host is a false choice. The key thing is to do things on both ends.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
I was just going to say, if you'd had a flashy answer to the question, I'd have really been worried.
Nationalize.
Jerry, I think one thing one might do is distinguish between sort of the concept of too big to manage, too complex to manage, versus difficult to manage, right? Because if you begin with the two, you've already made the normative judgment, right? If you recognize these are difficult institutions to manage and to regulate, that's a fair, in my mind, an absolutely fair assumption. To begin with the proposition that they're too big to regulate, too big to manage, seems to me as yet an undemonstrated proposition, right? And speaking from personal experience, and I recognize this is not an analogy that everybody would agree with, if you had asked me 15 years ago, was New York City too big to manage, too complex to manage, I would have said absolutely. You ask me today, and I'd say absolutely not. What we found when we got the right manager to manage New York City, he could manage New York City, and all the thoughts we had 15 years ago that this city is in decline, we had all sorts of problems, and I would have concluded it was too large and too complex. But today, no.
I have a two-part question that's related to single point of entry strategies. And as Michael mentioned, one of the requirements for this to work is that there be a sufficient long-term unsecured debt available. So the first part of that question is, and by the way, the Fed is going to tell us pretty soon what that amount is, as Michael said, including sort of the amount of inter-affiliate debt that's required. But the first part of the question is, do you need some sort of regulation about how this risk is now being dispersed? I mean, you wouldn't want to take the taxpayer off the hook to put pension funds on them. The second part of the question is that under single point of entry, after the recapitalization, it's assumed that there is tremendous amount of liquidity still available and to keep the firms operating. So the question is, if there's all this liquidity available, how